Hello. Today we're going to be going over my top 5 best grind spots for new players or just low gear score players in general, to where you can make some decent money, progress in a somewhat fast and effective manner, so that way you can get some gear in the near future. If you're fresh off of seasonals with full 2 gear, or if you just kind of have like around 600, 620 gear score, these spots could totally be good for you, and you may actually be able to make some gains every single week grinding these spots at the bare minimum of like, maybe 2-3 hours a day. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump to the video. Up first, we have Azman Temple. This is one of my oldies but goodie spots. It kind of hasn't been talked about recently, and that's because there's just better spots in general, but this area is so out of the way. You also have to find a portal in the desert to go there, which can be a total pain in the ass. And most players are looking for history of portals and not really Azman. So you don't have to worry about a whole lot of players jumping you in the Azman Temple. Plus, not a lot of PvP goes on in Azman because it's honestly not worth it. Like, fighting over a shitty rotation is kind of ass in my opinion. History, I get it, because a lot of people are trying to go for the compass piece, and even though there is a compass piece in Azman, it's one of the more easier pieces to get. So in my personal opinion, PvPing in Azman is completely worthless at this current time. With a yellow loot scroll, you should be making anywhere between 300 mil to 350 mil per hour. You can push it to 400, but you kind of have to get RNG carried with black shards and Tungrad drops, or Caphras. But Caphras are kind of like average here. It's like 15 to 20 an hour. Sometimes you can get 25, but really anything higher than that, you probably have to pop a tent buff or something. But with just a loot scroll, you're not getting that much, just 20 an hour. Moving on to the next area, we have Paulis Forest, and this is an area that was buffed recently with the Agris changes, along with like the Kama buff that changed all the areas around there. So on a yellow loot scroll, you're making 315 to 350 mil per hour. And honestly, I think you can push that higher if you're a super speed class like a Musa, Maywell, Valkyrie, anything like that. You're making dummy money. On a blue loot scroll, you're going to be making about 200, 250 mil an hour, which is still pretty good, especially if you're practicing rotations and whatnot. This is totally acceptable. The Caphras aren't really that poppin' here, so you don't really need to worry too much about the Caphras, but the XP here is really good, as well as skill XP. I think it's still rather decent. So even with the changes and everything, it's honestly just a net positive in general, because before you were barely making like 90 mil an hour, if that. And now you're making well over 200. So honestly, Paulis is big ups right now. If you're a player that needs skill XP and money at the same time just to level up your character, this is perfect. Up next, we've got Miramax Ruins, aka Trees. This is another oldie but goodie spot, but it also has received buffs since the Kama change. So now it's got a minor trash loot increase. Like, I think it was 17.5 before, and now it's like 18.2. Which is not that insane of a trash buff, but what they did change is how the trees operate. So now you have to hit the tree and it can't be destroyed, and you can now just kind of sit at the pod and just kill the mobs effectively, and then move on to the next one. Just do your whole hour rotation and you're good to go. Another thing to note is that this is a group grind spot, so even though you could grind this theoretically by yourself, I mean, shit, I did it pretty much all seasons, and I have a video on my Mystic where I soloed trees or 2-manned it. It's really fun. And it's good if you have, friends that play this game and you started together, and you guys can continue playing together, so you don't have to blow your brains out individually grinding circles by yourselves. As for the money per hour, you're making anywhere between 350 to 400 mil. This is highly dependent on the Caphra drop, as well as if you get a Voltara and what the Voltaras are worth on your market. Currently for us, they're not exactly that great, but they are still worth a little bit of something, and it can still push you over 400. Up next, we have Centaurs. This spot is broken, genuinely broken. It's so good. It's so fucking good. With full Tuvala on a speed class, you literally need like negative AP. You could be sub 200 and still dumpster this place. 600 plus mil an hour. That's what we're talking about right now. And this is a problem because, in my opinion, this is supposed to be a new player area, but PA has this insane balancing. Like, their mentality when it comes to balancing and spot balancing is so bad. Keep in mind, Centaurs is a low level area. This is literally 190 to 200 AP requirement, okay? Like, very minimal amounts of AP to grind here. And you're telling me that when I go to a spot that requires me to have 280 AP, I'm making less money going there instead of going to Centaurs, where the AP is literally like 100 difference. And don't get it twisted where I'm saying, this spot should be nerfed. Fuck no. I think new players should definitely have the same opportunity to make a dummy amount of money that old players have, or veteran players in general. but I think that the veteran players should be rewarded more because they're fighting in grander spots, in my opinion. When you go to a spot and you have the potential to die there, or you have just a more sweaty grind because you have to keep up with buffs or you have to keep up with all sorts of things, it becomes a bit muddy, in my opinion, when it comes to grinding in general. It just means like you're working smarter, not harder, but at the same time, you're kind of fucking over new players because a 700 gear score player goes to Centaurs, and then a guy fresh off seasonal goes to Centaurs, and then they have no chance against the 700 gear score player. They're just, they're gonna get dumpstered immediately and die. It is just honestly like a no net positive for new players here. But I mean, if you can get a nice chill hour, or if you're on protection in your guild, or if you're guildless or whatever and you're not on Arsha, then I mean, you can grind here more or less in peace because people are not going to go red trying to kill you, which is retarded anyway. But the point being is that this spot is really fucking good, upwards of 600 mil per hour. The main thing here is the trash loot. It's literally worth like 21,000, which is insanity. And you pop a yellow loot scroll and Agris, you're making just 528 million just in trash loot, 500 mil. Then you factor in the Kafirs that you get here, which is averaging like 15 to 20. That's another like 60-ish mil, 50 mil, something like that. And then you got the BMCs, which do drop a lot here, which is, anywhere between 10 and 15. And that will carry some money too. Even though they are down in price currently, you can still hold on to them for your Jatina quest items and stuff like that. For your pen weapons, pen armors, or even your pen accessory quests, you need these BMCs anyway, so it's totally fine. But yeah, Centaurs is busted AF. I hope it stays this way and they don't nerf it and they buff other areas for veteran players to feel rewarded, because right now I feel like dog shit not grinding Centaurs. So anyway, moving on to the last spot here, Round Sulfur Mine, or is it Round or Round? Is this a typo in Garmoth? Hold on, boys. I gotta go look at this. Holy shit, it's called Round Sulfur Mine. I thought it was always called Round. I'm actually brain dead. Anyway, you don't need a whole lot of AP to grind here, fresh off seasonals once again, and you can make a dummy amount of money, anywhere between 300, 350 mil on a yellow loot scroll. If you do happen to run a blue, you're still making a good amount, 230 to 250, even still pushing towards 300 if you are moving fast as fuck. Personally, I always ran a yellow loot scroll here just because the trash loot alone is like almost 200 mil by itself. So I think yellow loot scroll is the way to go for Sulfur Mine. But if you run a blue just for practice runs, that's completely fine as well. One thing to take note of is that the Kafir drop rate here is actually pretty good. You usually get 20 to 25 per hour, which is a pretty decent chunk of money, like 70, 80 mil right there. Not only that, but you also get scrolls written in an ancient language. You don't get a whole lot of these like you do in Pilaku Jail or even History. I think History drops a bit too, but overall you're getting like 10, 15 an hour, but they do sell for about 3.1 mil currently on consoles. So it's actually a decent chunk of money. And if you happen to save them and run them at a later time, you could actually flip that into over 100 mil or more. And yeah, that pretty much concludes everything. I will say some honorable mentions that I do kind of want to point out for those of you that may want like a sort of less popular area, or maybe you want to challenge yourself. My first honorable mention is Star's End. If you start getting a little bit of AP, like around 261 Kudum or 269 Kudum, definitely give Star's End a try, because you can easily make 400 mil plus, and even like pushing it upwards of 500 to even 700 if you get lucky with distortion earrings. This grind's not that sweaty, but I will say that you are kind of like pushing it a little bit if you happen to kind of grind it. You need to know the rotation, you need to understand your character pretty well. It's something that is very rewarding for your time if you do get the black distortion earring. However, if you take that out of the factor, then you kind of only are making like 250 mil an hour, which kind of sucks. It's definitely a gamble spot. If you want to gamble with your time and hope that you get maybe a black distortion earring or two, then go for it. If you don't want to gamble with your time and you rather just make consistent money that's not based on RNG, don't come to Star's End. Another decent spot would be Kratuga Ancient Ruins. Again, this is another like I want to challenge myself kind of spot. You don't need a lot of AP to grind here, but it is definitely class dependent. Like if you're playing a striker, warrior, anything that's generally pretty tanky and has some sort of healing factors, this spot is going to be for you, and you can actually be like full SA. But if you're playing a class that has like minimal protections or no iframes and you're just throwing out damage, then this spot can be kind of annoying at low DP because they will stun you and they will shred your shit. So you have to be a little careful. But if you do learn to grind this spot appropriately, you're making good money. Like we're talking 450 plus. It's genuinely not that bad on God. So honestly, if you're really trying to make some money also and challenge yourself, Gratuga Ancient Ruins, pretty good as well. But anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.